Welcome to today's webinar, Shortage Ahead, Conquer the Challenges of Talent Management in Field Service. I'm Sarah Nicastro, Editor-in-Chief of Field Technologies, and I'll be moderating today's event. There's a monumental challenge facing many field service organizations today. That challenge is the aging workforce. As highly knowledgeable and skilled workers reach retirement age, field service organizations are struggling to backfill their positions. Organizations that are accustomed to an older workforce can also have a hard time understanding how to attract and retain younger workers. Today you're going to receive some valuable advice on this topic from Randy Reynolds, Vice President of Product Marketing at ServiceMax, and Patrice Eberlein, Vice President of Customer Transformation at ServiceMax. After Randy and Patrice share some great information with us, we'll also hold a Q&A session so that you can ask them some questions. We will hold the Q&A after both presenters have spoken, but feel free to submit questions as we go along. We'll get to as many as possible during the Q&A, and any that we don't have time to get to, we will certainly follow up on after today's event. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Randy Reynolds to begin today's session. Randy?
Great. Thanks, Sarah. So let me kind of kick things off here with telling you a little bit about how I came to be involved in this topic recently. First of all, from a background standpoint, I spent a fair amount of time working for a company called SuccessFactors that was very much in the talent management space. So this is kind of an area of business that I have some understanding of. But what I didn't realize is what a critical topic it is within the field service space. And so in November of last year, we held a customer event in Paris called Max Live, and we had a series of breakout sessions. We had a panel discussion on this, as well as a roundtable discussion on the topic of talent. And this is a picture of the actual roundtable discussion taking place with some of our customers. And what I thought was interesting in this conversation was kind of hearing what some of our customers are dealing with in the field service space. And you know, the first thing that we talked about was some of the changes going on in the requirements that people are looking for in order to fill field service positions. I think that historically they would typically look for getting talent from people that had very technical knowledge, very product detailed knowledge, and what has in fact started to happen is that because the role of the field service technician is changing, they're actually looking for people that have probably more what we would call soft skills, ability to interact with customers and kind of deal with different situations that are taking place out in the field. And so rather than spending a lot of time trying to find people with great vocational skills, they feel like those skills can be taught and trained on the job, but what they really need are people that understand and can relate to customers in different situations. So I thought that was interesting. We also talked about the need to really market roles within field service. A lot of times it's a competitive market depending upon where your organization is located, and really being able to explain the value that field service provides. And there are a lot of stereotypical views of what a field service technician is, and what I think what they're trying to do is use different social media, do different types of programs to attract a different set of talent. And Patrice is going to talk a little bit about that, or quite a bit about that shortly. And then the final thing that we talked about was just how important it is to have some kind of measurement tools to understand what people are doing and where they're spending their time. And this is where ServiceMax actually plays a role in that, because for a lot of these companies, they never had the visibility into exactly what types of functions their technicians were performing when they were out at customer sites, whether they were actually repairing equipment or doing kind of customer relations types of activities. And so having more of that information and being able to track that helped them better understand the profile and the skill sets of people that they were trying to attract. So this is kind of, as we started to dig into this a little bit more, we discovered that my colleague Patrice here was also kind of deep into understanding this, and is in the process of creating an article, white paper on this whole topic. And so we thought it would be great to to have this webinar kind of feature some of the things that Patrice has been learning through some of her research, and share with you some of the information that she has created. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Patrice, and she can introduce herself in the remainder of the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Randy. I'm thrilled to be able to be here to share some information about a shift we're seeing in the workforce today, some of the impacts that we're finding in our field service organizations, and probably most importantly, how we can use this change to ignite transformation and really generate some benefits moving forward as we look towards future year staffing. So before we start, I should probably give you a little bit of background about me just for some context. I've had almost 20 years in professional services, and this is everything from implementation to training to change management, deployment and adoption. Deployment and adoption are my sweet spots. I love this stuff. And although all of my career has been focused on providing and enabling solutions for our customers, it's really here at ServiceMax where we are relentless, not only on providing those solutions, but also on truly understanding the challenges in business of field service, exactly where you all live, both the current landscape as well as future trends. So what I'm going to share with you today is coming out of that focus and out of that research. I always like to start with some data, so let's take a couple of data points. First of all, we'll take a look at 40%. 40%, that's the average percent of engineering and skill positions that are currently held by employees over 40 years old. Now, when they retire or resign, most of their knowledge will not be captured or transferred. It simply walks out the door. You all may know this as that theory of tribal knowledge. This is expertise that they have gained over careers and over years and years of experience that allows them from a field service perspective to seemingly just know the ropes to skip, the ropes to know, the levers to pull, even when documentation doesn't exist or is partial. And I'm sure a number of you out there have very recent experiences with this. I myself just had a field technician come into my home not a couple of weeks ago, and being a little bit of a geek, I'd been all over the web looking for solutions to my problem. And honestly, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot I was going to be offered, but that was the next step. And the field technician came in and surprisingly in the space of literally 5 to 10 minutes, had a quote-unquote workaround, not documented anywhere, by the way, that fixed my problem and gave me some additional life on my machine, my range, and then promptly kind of left me feeling wonderful about this. So this stuff is important, and it's important that we recognize the issue that we're faced here. Now, that second statistic, that 60%, this is the percentage of companies that report being currently understaffed in their technical and highly skilled positions. Interesting that demand for technical and engineering skills is expected to grow by twice that of other professions by 2025. And together, if you take that 40%, you take the 60%, this represents some incredible pressure on our field service teams as we move forward. So what's happening here? Let's take a look. You know, we've been lucky in field service in that traditionally we have low turnover and high company loyalty. Folks come into our organizations and they make a career out of it. We really don't have employee churn as a typical issue that we talk about. This is changing, however, and our traditionally low turnover is kind of aging out, as you can see here. Talent and all that knowledge, all that tribal knowledge is starting to leave the organization, needs to be replaced quickly. It's interesting, I was reading on the web the other day, and it was completely a different article, but according to Caterpillar, even outside the aging out of this workforce, Caterpillar dealerships around the world will need to hire an additional 45,000 field service engineers in the next 5 years alone. Now, that article was last year, so we've got 4 left. Now, I will agree, Caterpillar is a large company. It's a huge company, but you can see the impact and see the things that we're kind of dealing with here. But wait, there's more. To shine an even brighter light on this, for the first time in history, our growth as a society is slowing down. You know, we recently reached 7 billion people in the world in 2014, but it took us a year longer to grow from 6 billion to 7 billion than it did from 5 to 6. We're in the unique situation of having an aging workforce, expecting to double the demand, and an overall pool of resources whose growth rate is slowing. In essence, we're going to be competing more and more for this talent. So the big question is, what do we do, and who do we do it with as we're moving into 2015 and beyond? Enter the millennials. By 2020, a full 50% of the labor force is going to be millennials. Now, millennials are those workers who are born after 1980. Why is this important? Well, certainly they have large numbers. But beyond that, millennials represent a huge shift in our workforce. And this is everything from educational background. You know, roughly 60 to 63% of millennials have attended college and university. You compare that to, say, 40 to 45% of baby boomers, and you can see the difference there. Technical savvy, much more technically savvy, even how they fundamentally think about work, fundamentally think about their family, their role in their world, their role in society. It's all changed. It's kind of interesting, and you can imagine with that volume of this generation coming down the pipe that retailers would be all over this, and you'd be quite right. Companies like Best Buy and Starbucks, Nike, and of course Apple have all pandered to the millennial. It's not just because of the buying power, but it's because of how they uniquely interact among themselves and how they approach buying decisions with the vendor. But even beyond that, they're getting the attention of business. Companies like Marriott, even Hilton, but I'm showing Marriott here as an example, are really getting into it. Marriott recently debuted a new hotel brand. It's AC Hotels. This one that I'm showing here is out of New Orleans, I believe, and it's specifically for this new generation of travelers. From collaborative business centers to social lobbies, even networking and relaxation lounges, and rooms equipped with the latest technology, businesses are embracing the millennial. You know, that latest technology hit me when I was traveling not too long ago. I had an iPad when I walked into my hotel room, and I was able to control the HVAC and the lighting and the TV, and I even ordered food off of it. It's all becoming very integrated and a very different experience than maybe 5 years ago. So we're definitely looking at harnessing the power of the sheer numbers. But of course, along with that, you probably have some stereotypes. And there is a rather unfortunate stereotype about this group of individuals in this generation. You know, in May of 2013, Time magazine did a cover article on the millennials. There was a lot of talk about that article, but you can see by the title that the front cover kind of says it all. Often thought to be the me generation, they have in recent months created quite a buzz around the water cooler as well as our recruiting approaches. National Institutes of Health, they do a great deal of research on this, and they've spent a great deal of time and resources studying all the millennial personalities. Now, I'll spare you a lot of the data because it is exhaustive. I think I read about 75 to 100 pages worth. But I find it really interesting that among other things, and this relates to our field service and our ways of bringing this generation into the workforce, it was found that 40% of the study group thought or think they should be promoted every couple of years. And here's the kicker, regardless of performance. Now think about how different that is from previous generations. The pay for performance generation, the you have to put in your dues generation. All of this is painting a very different picture. So it probably is worth our time to figure out what in the world makes these millennials tick. Now there are a lot of traits. You can do a lot of reading and find out a lot of really neat things about this group as a whole. But I wanted to bring it down to the top 3 to 4 traits that I think truly apply to the workplace, truly apply or can apply to field service and to modern field service as we march forward from 2015 and beyond. So the first trait we'll talk about is they love technology. Love technology. Matter of fact, millennials have grown up with technology so much that most only have a cell phone, no landline at all. And they've jumped fully into social media as an integrated part of their lives. A couple statistics on that. 52% have over, wait for it, 500 Facebook friends. 52%. And 91% make all of the check-ins that you see when you go to a concert or you attend a restaurant or you're applying for a job. Make those public to their friends. So this is a very expansive group that loves technology. Beyond that, though, they have access to millions of pieces of digital content, and they're consuming those on tablets and phones. Google is where they live. Matter of fact, Google has turned into a verb. We're going to Google this, we're going to Google that. They're all in the thick of it. And I used to go to the library, and not to really date myself, but I had the Encyclopedia Britannica. So you can see the change that we've gotten here. They have libraries of music rather than bookshelves of vinyl. And as a group, and this is important, they tend to believe that technology can truly be the key that brings people and brings society together. Now, there's an American think tank. It's a nonpartisan American think tank based in Washington, D.C. called the Pew Research Center. And they've done a number of studies on millennial trends, including connection to mobile devices. And I did find it really rather interesting, a couple of these, not only the social media aspect, but hey, do you sleep with your cell phone? All right, maybe not sleep with your cell phone, but is it on the nightstand? Most likely it is. And as you can see here, and those statistics earlier kind of confirm, many have multiple profiles on social media. You know, in just 5 years' time, the millennials, remember that's not too far past, everybody born after 1980, will comprise approximately 50% of the workforce. Matter of fact, in the few seconds that it's taken us just to take a look at these statistics, a millennial would have easily sent a text, paid for their coffee with the Starbucks app, and perhaps even downloaded a song from iTunes. It's quite impactful, the role of technology in their lives. Beyond technology, though, a second big thing about millennials is they have boundless energy, and they want to make an impact. They sincerely want to make a visible impact on everything around them, on their work, on their community, and even on society in general. And I underscore that a little bit because as managers and with your line supervisors and people in your organization, this is going to become important for them. This is a confident group. They've been reared in a world where each was given constant attention, they were given support, they were given accolades. Remember that Time article, if you'd read through it, this can also be called the generation of everybody gets a trophy, quote unquote. A couple of interesting notes here, you know, regarding their wanting to make a global impact, and it's truly a piece of their makeup and their profile. Again, that Pew Research Center study found that millennials placed a higher priority on helping people in need at 21% than on having a high-paying career at 17%. Something to keep in mind as we kind of move forward on this. Also, according to the Council of Economic Advisors, and this was very recent, just back in October of 2014, millennials are much more likely than previous generations to state that making a contribution to society is very important to them. And as such, they strive to incorporate all that social conscious and greater good into their work lives. And you can see how that might affect us in field service as well. A third piece of the puzzle, if you will. This is a highly important piece, particularly as field service leaders, particularly as we march into modern field service and to garnering all that we can for the bottom line of our organizations. Millennials are highly creative and highly collaborative. Many of you may have kids that are in this generation. Most have spent a good deal of their lives participating on teams, everything from sports teams to special interest clubs, and of course that social media we've been talking about. They truly do live in a world of we rather than a world of me. And because of that, they crave a life rich with different experiences based on relationships rather than leverage. They value the role they play, and they value the creativity and the feedback they get for bringing that creativity to the workplace. So those are the big three, if you will. But if you think about those three, technology, impact in society, creativity, teamwork, whatever makes that up, they all are a very, very good fit for field service if, underscored, they're cultivated, supported, and coached appropriately. So I guess the first question is, how in the world do we get them? How do we attract this workforce? Now, gone are the days where a company's participation in regional hiring events or advertising in the paper or even a website is going to bring in a throng of candidates. That doesn't necessarily happen anymore. And quite frankly, there is a great deal, particularly with this generation, of backdoor reference checking through that society and through the social media kind of avenues. This generation has different hot buttons. And as such, they require different, for lack of a better word, bait, if you will. In order to attract this generation, we need to support the notion that recruiting is a two-way street. In addition to screening for skills and fit, we need to pay attention to supporting the hot buttons. Now, I'm going to list 7, so it's a little bit of a wordy slide here, but I think each one of them is very, very important. The first is around company values, mission, and purpose. At every opportunity, underscore your company's higher purpose so they can pull context in social meeting. They will do that. The values, the mission, the benefits of a company should not be ignored in the recruiting process. Remember that these candidates have an unlimited amount of information and access to that information on the web, and so they'll actually come to an opportunity and come to a recruiting event or an interview with a great deal more knowledge than you might expect. Social is where they live. We can't ignore it. Use this as an outlet to educate candidates, to pull candidates, to communicate your values. Just reach out, because they will in turn be reaching out. And as many of you who are familiar with Facebook and other social norms here, you'll notice that you get fans. And this is the generation that makes that fan base strong and is not afraid of liking or unliking various things. So this does play a part in our recruiting. Work-life balance, very important, but it does not mean they're looking for an easy ride. You know, on the contrary, millennials are going to work very, very hard for you. That energy they bring is incredible, but they are going to respect your respect for work-life balance. So don't forget to include that in the conversations, include that as part of the experience of working for your organizations. Millennials value FaceTime. Mentorship training, huge. Now this is going to give us some unique challenges, admittedly, and many of you have a lot of remote teams. So there are some challenges inherent with that, but think of those also as opportunities. They do value FaceTime. If I put a TM next to that, that could be FaceTime the app. So bring the technology into this. They value learning from others. Setting up situations, setting up role expectations that support their collaborative nature is another key. It's another hot button. It shouldn't be ignored. It's something that will bring this generation to you and will keep them with you for longer. And of course, my favorite, and I'm sure yours if you have a millennial workforce or part of one, variety is the spice of life. They want to experience it all. And they want to experience it as much as possible in the work world as well as their personal life. And I can tell you from personal experience, a few months ago we had a hiring event here at ServiceMax, and a good chunk of that team, or that group of people who came in, were millennials. We had about 30 that dropped in, and we had on a rotation. It was quite an intensive recruiting day. But I was amazed at how many times I was asked what the role expectations were going to be and what different experiences they could have and how they could get to the next level, and even if it's not a level up, how they could gain more, a broader vision of the role and add more to it. So this is impressive, and this will hit you from the get-go. And then, of course, like number one, millennials gravitate towards those companies with strong social responsibility. So if your company has that outreach, if your company has that as part of its mission or values, highlight it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. You know, many field service organizations are actively trying to recruit talent. And I was out on the web the other day for a completely different purpose, but I happened to land on General Electric's site, and I went into the recruiting end. And I have it here. I'll read it to you because I want to get it correctly. But GE has example, quote-unquote, fit questions on their website. And the quote is, if you answer yes to the questions below, you may be a good fit for a field service engineer at GE Healthcare. There were 4 questions. The first one was, do you take pride in owning a customer relationship and in delivering on the process of customer satisfaction? Read, do you enjoy making an impact? Second question, do you appreciate being able to use both technical and people skills? Read, variety is the spice of life. The third question, do you like working for a global organization as it provides a wider range of opportunities than perhaps smaller companies? And the last one, are you highly pleased with an autonomous role, yet work well as a member of a team? Read, collaboration. By paying attention to these millennial hot buttons, you're going to be in great shape to attract these candidates. So let's assume for a moment that we've got them. Now what do we do with them? How do we grow them, and how do we ensure their success? Well, I would say the first thing we do is go back to those traits we originally talked about. Use their love of technology. Now, okay, maybe Iron Man is the wrong example here, but remember that embracing innovation is the norm for millennials. Remember, these are the folks that are standing in line for hours to get the latest phone. They subscribe to countless tech blogs. They participate and contribute to those same blogs. And they're generally on top of all things, quote unquote, new and interesting. You know, according to a Deloitte survey, millennials want to work in organizations that support innovation. They are drawn to that technology. They are drawn to the latest in mobility. If you're using mobility as part of your field service, they're drawn to that. And they quickly and effortlessly incorporate all those tools that you're bringing in into their lives. From tablets and phones to wearables, even integrated wristbands, some of these watches. It's coming up left and right. Embracing innovation is the norm for this generation. Now, the good news here is that many of you are also harnessing new technologies, and you are rolling them at high speeds in an effort to provide best-in-class experiences for your customers, in an effort to provide everything you can. The marriage of that effort and the millennial can be a huge win for the future of field service. You remember the introduction of the iPad? When ServiceMax introduced the iPad, part of the deployment strategy of a lot of our enterprise customers was based on helping the workforce overcome the learning curve. And it was not at all uncommon for me to work with customers who had preloaded those iPads and those tablets with things like Angry Bird and interest apps like Pinterest, just to help them get more comfortable and get over the learning curve of technology. Well, we're lucky. We do not have to worry about that with the millennials. Their hunger for knowledge truly means lowered learning curves for you and quicker adoption of tools for your business. Taking a look at another one of those traits, harnessing that energy. Millennials want to change the world for the better. They actually have the energy and not unlike them to say the expectation that they'll do just that. Remember that 4.0 GPA? Maybe I'm dating myself here. 4.0 was the thing you strive to. I understand you don't strive to that anymore. Matter of fact, this group of millennials have grown up in a world where a grade point average at the highest scale, which is now more than 4.0, was really commonplace, and where the acceptance into the college and the university where most of them have gone is as much a function of their marks as it is their participation in the community. Everything from charity events and religious stuff and political stuff, getting out in the community, giving to the greater good. They have the energy to do that. They've done it all their lives. So let's use that energy and vitality. Encourage active participation and ownership of that customer relationship. Encourage that so you can get more and more tight with your customers and greater loyalty at every encounter. Bring them into the fold to be part of the service vision, your service vision for your organization. Let them understand the passion you have for your offerings and for your customers. I'm telling you, they are eager to make a difference. They will push you to make a difference, and they will not disappoint. Now, feedback and coaching are definitely part of every manager's plan, if you will. But in this instance, it's truly a requirement. Millennials will want to, and shall I say, will need to, have frequent and thoughtful feedback and coaching. Now, don't shortchange this. They will know if the investment that you're putting in them is not equal to the investment that they are putting in you. Make sure you have time scheduled in their onboarding and part of their daily role on the calendar, regular intervals with their line managers, with their service supervisors to track progress and engagement. Now, here's a really interesting data point for you. Deloitte, again, they did a recent study that revealed, and I know that we have all been used to annual performance reviews, right? Well, Deloitte did a study that revealed quarterly review plans generated 31% higher productivity than annual reviews with this generation, with millennials. And the second piece of this, which arguably is probably as important, the closer millennials are to their metrics, the better off they are. The more comfortable they are, the more supported and engaged they are. Make metrics a part of their jobs. Make them easy to access. You might consider using technology or some of the gamification techniques such as leaderboards and things of that nature that you can bring to their day-to-day work life. Put it on a tablet, put it on an iPad, give it to them in the palm of their hands so they see exactly how they're doing and can get that constant feedback. Now, with respect to positive feedback, there's sometimes a perceived need that with the millennials you always have to stroke them. Well, there's also some good news with this. It doesn't mean meaningless stroking. It doesn't mean exhaustive messages. It doesn't mean making things up. Simple messages around thanks for the efforts, congratulations, things of that nature will go a long way and will also help overall employee satisfaction with the greater group because you've got a diverse group here you're pulling in. So while it's sometimes said that millennials can be needy, it's really quite easy to strike a balance there. From a day-to-day perspective, think about mentorship programs with the more experienced workers. Pair a highly tenured employee with a newbie. This could also help bridge that tribal knowledge issue we talked about initially. They're going to respect and learn from these relationships. They're in turn going to engage and inform others. All goodness. We talked about variety of the spice of life. This is underscored here with millennials. We need to give this generation of employees a variety of experiences. Millennials want to be involved. Let them. You'll be amazed at the creativity they bring to the table. Now, whether you are trying to uncover new avenues for revenue generation, looking at new ideas around cost cutting, whatever you're doing, if you're open to their input, and if you're generous in your communication, you're going to reap the benefits. There's a cautionary flag here, though, but remember that millennial employees need to make an impact quickly, and that comes with an expectation. That comes with an expectation of continuous feedback, frequent coaching, a variety of work experiences. So to combat that, to work with that, think about role rotations. Think about ride-along programs in your organization, specialized training that might be able to tie into your profitability, and if you're transforming your service team from cost center to profit center, tie into that service transformation set of goals. Have them bring back information to the rest of the team. Make that collaborative. Have them describe their experiences in those rotations. Give the day in the life. You're going to be amazed at the results here, and there's kind of a watch phrase that I like to use with millennials. Participation and engagement will breed loyalty and satisfaction with this generation, so definitely use it. You know, other themes that work well and perhaps are required with the millennials are something around adding rungs to the career ladder. Now, that doesn't mean inflating things that aren't there, but maybe smaller bumps in responsibility. If you can define some smaller steps and hook these steps up with the additional specialized training or other incentives, you're going to have a winner here. You know, I had a customer not too terribly long ago that did just that. They did an employee survey, and they sent it out to all their field technicians, and it came back with kind of a surprising theme there. The field engineers wanted to get closer to the customer. In an attempt to do that, this customer gave them some specialized training. So they took an incentive and a reward and they put it in place. The specialized training for this organization was around contracts, and I'm going to say a bad word here, sales. Now, sales not in the light of let's turn a field service engineer into a salesperson, but sales in the way of having curious conversations, helping them to keep their eyes open and their ear to the ground and look for potential opportunities. What came out of this was a creation of an elite team as part of their field service organization, where the role was not only to go out and satisfy work orders, but they were sent out on those work orders of high impact, high value, where contracts were up for renewal, where there was something that they could make an additional impact and support even the sales organization inside. So things of that nature can truly, truly work with millennials as well. Now, I do realize that you've got a bunch of generations in your teams. So how do these millennials fit into the overall fabric of your field service teams? Teams where there certainly are multiple generations. Teams where there are maybe locations regionally, but remote teams. Some field service engineers may come in once a month, and that's about it. A lot of things going on there. So how do these millennials fit into that fabric? Actually quite well, particularly given the diversity that many of us have to deal with. Now, overall, I feel like it's best to do a few things when dealing with millennials, but school of thought is you want to do these things no matter who you're dealing with. So let's think in terms of, number one, use multiple communication avenues. You don't want to alienate any one group. Previous generations have felt very comfortable doing face-to-face training, and then it went a little more towards phone types of conversations. So use face-to-face and phone time in addition to instant messages and webinars and just-in-time pull-down onboarding. Ask when in doubt, don't assume. You know, particularly with respect to working relationships, perhaps preferred incentives if you're doing that, core values, don't let the stereotypes of the generation necessarily control. You always want to confirm that stuff. So multiple communication avenues, ask when in doubt, don't assume. And the third thing, be open to the new ideas and suggestions that your millennials are going to bring. And honestly, to the positive changes that the overall culture of the service team can embrace. As leaders, you all are in a unique position to take the best from everybody on your team, so embrace that and run with it. It's easy to see kind of correlations if you take a look between the needs of today's field service organizations and some of the big strengths of the millennial, particularly for those of you that have widening product bases. And in some cases, it might take months, even years, to fully train an engineer. Companies cannot afford to risk high attrition. certainly not without a plan to replace that talent and replace it well. The key is just to capitalize on the opportunity that we have to understand this new generation and to hit the strengths and integrate it in with the rest of your work team. So hopefully knowing a little bit about the landscape will help you kind of do just that. Ready? Anything to add? Or?
Great, thank you, Patrice. That was excellent. So, Sarah, I think at this point we're willing to take a look and see if we have any questions.
Okay, that sounds good. We certainly do. So let me just start at the top, and anyone else out there that is listening, if you have a question, go ahead and get it typed in now. We'll get to as many here as we can. So the first question is, are companies providing incentives to attract new talent?
I can lead off on that one. I have seen some companies look at some of the hot buttons in particular to provide incentives, and oftentimes when you hear the word incentive, you start thinking in terms of dollars and cents. But remember, it doesn't have to be that way. There are a lot of ways to do this. Role rotations can actually be a big incentive, that you're going to get that variety of exposure and variety of experience. So that would be one thing. I've also seen organizations, like one of our customers, McKinley Equipment, they actually do provide that dollars and cents, kind of a variable component to the field service engineer's pay. All around that is kind of coming up. It's a new trend, but the pay is around keeping your eyes open and your ear to the ground. So it's paying field service technicians to notice things more than anything else. And I guess I would say that it's interesting. Keenan Flagler Business School did a study a while back, and it wasn't particularly around millennials. It was a subset, so it was almost a newer group. And it showed up that 22% said the most valued benefit that any company could give to them was training and development. So that might be a way that you can provide incentives that aren't necessarily a signing bonus or whatever we might think of traditionally in dollars and cents. I don't know if that you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I would just add that one of the things that we've heard from some of our customers that was maybe a little bit of a surprise to us is that as a lot of these service companies were starting to adopt and deploy our mobile applications on the iPad itself became a tool for attracting new talent, because it became, they kind of created a profile of being a cool kind of advanced technology type of company, and it became a way of attracting some of those millennials that Patrice had been talking about. So I think just having the opportunity to use some of the tools and technologies that are out in the marketplace today becomes a way of incenting people to join your organization.
That makes sense, especially when, there's a growing need, for these companies to recruit those folks, and, obviously somewhat of a finite number of them, right? I mean, they're going to pick the organizations that, seem to be, ahead of the curve a little bit and up to date on those things, before they go somewhere that's, using paper and pencils and all of that sort of stuff. Okay, so the next question says, how do you ensure you have the right management team or structure to make sure millennials are successful? Wow, that's a good one. A couple of thoughts, I guess. I always say a couple, whether I have one or three. So Randy, keep me honest on this. Span of control and Facetime are the things that first come to mind. Certainly around that, being able to provide coaching and feedback, that does kind of have some impact on span of control and how many field techs to a supervisor. Using the mentorship and using maybe leads and that type of thing will keep it down as far as costs on the books and the P&L, but that would be one thought. Right team structure to make the millennials successful. The other thing that might be here, education and deployment, kind of coming off of that last question, is key. And certainly here at ServiceMax, we have a tremendous education team that routinely works with customers to hit all the hot buttons. So I think that the onboarding programs, understanding their impacts, that might be something you look at that might also allow you to give some structure to millennials and help make them successful. Great. Randy, anything you want to add there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So the next question, there's actually been 3 or 4 questions that are sort of all rolled into this. So let me kind of ask the question and then add a few specific points to it. So the question is, where do companies go to recruit millennial field techs? But then there was a couple spin-offs on that question. One being, are employers looking more outside of their region or location to recruit, or how about searching overseas? And then another asking about recruiting potentially from colleges and universities. So maybe just speak to that topic in general, but address those specific points.
Oh, this is great. This is good. I'm actually looking for a note that I made. Hang on here. This is really exciting. JobVite does a lot of stats, and if you haven't figured out now, I'm kind of into statistics. But where do companies go to recruit millennial field techs? A few things, a few thoughts. I'm sorry, Randy, didn't mean to jump in on this, but certainly professional networking sites. Remember, they're collaborative and they're social, so that would be one place. But truly, 94% of successful companies use social media, and that was one of the things that when we talked about the hot buttons, use social media as well. Have a company presence out on Facebook and start gathering fans. It's tremendous how that works. There used to be that commercial of the expansiveness of social media, and it still reigns true. I'm trying to think. I think it was in last year, maybe the year before, there was a study done that put almost 50% improvement just by using social media as part of your recruiting kind of approach, if you will. I like the idea of college and universities. I was speaking with one of the HR directors at one of our customers not too long ago, and they were talking about, due to the fact that they're now looking at recruiting for skills and fit as well as technical types of things, they go to college and universities and really pluck people right out of the technology because they're going to put them right into the technology and put them into a career growth. So I think college and universities is great. I have not heard as much about kind of in-region, out-of-region from the perspective of overseas or onshore, nearshore, offshore, but I don't know, Randy, if you've heard of that as much. And then one other thing that kind of comes to mind, and maybe a little bit on the adjunct of that, when you're talking about recruiting millennials, and I'm trying to think of who the customer was, broaden the base. So, for instance, allow for video resumes. That's starting to come up right now. They use technology, and that's we're seeing a trend there. Also look at interactive, kind of multiple technology interview techniques. So not only are you throwing something out there on social media, but you have a way to kind of have that one-on-one or that real-time pre-formal recruiting process engagement with potential candidates. So that might be just something to think of.
Yeah, a couple of things that came up during the panel discussion that I was involved in at our Max Live event was people talking about recruiting from the kind of non-traditional sources, non-traditional backgrounds. They were looking at getting more people that had come from a customer service background, even a retail background, any kinds of roles where people had spent a lot of time dealing face-to-face with customers. So regardless of their technical skill sets, it was more that they were focused on people that had more of, again, those softer skills that we talked about. And so that's something that we've seen a lot of these companies doing, is they're going to different sources than they would traditionally go to recruit field service professionals. The other thing is that there's a really growing demand and need to get more women into this field, because a lot of times women have that innate ability to kind of deal and interact with people, and being able to train them in some of the technical skills that are required is probably, in a lot of cases, the easier thing for companies to deal with. And so I think that's also another approach that several of the companies that we talked with are trying to pursue. That's
great. All good information. So the next question here is an interesting one, and I think maybe some of what you mentioned earlier is applicable again with this question, but it's asking, how do you make hands-on field work exciting?
What, hands-on field work's not exciting? There are a lot of things. It's interesting when you look at field service technicians. Down to one of them, they also have traits, regardless of generational stuff. You just look at a field service tech, and Randy, I don't know whether you'll agree with this, but they all tend to be helpers, right? Mm-hmm. And they tend to be very much excited about fixing a problem, whether it is a technical problem, whether it's an interacting kind of a problem. They're very much a helper kind of a personality. So pulling them in and making kind of the field service strategy and importance of field service as a piece of the overall company profit and loss statement, they're a piece of that, right? They are part of that and they support that. Making their role kind of more important is actually very exciting to them. Taking it down to the, some of you have dealt with net promoter scores and things of that nature. Traditionally, field service has not been necessarily putting a great deal of emphasis on it, but now it is, right? And so making sure there's a connection between your field service engineer and what they're doing for the reputation of the company is also very exciting. Now, I probably took a left turn there because you may have been expecting me to talk about the technology, which does make it exciting. So don't avoid that. Anything that you can do to bring in that variety of tools and that variety of kind of new and innovative ways of doing things and being open to using your employees and gaining updates and insights and things from them will also excite them. So I guess it's kind of a combination of just who they inherently are, their DNA, and then how we can bring them into an understanding that their role is really very, very important, not just to the field service organization, but really to the bottom line now of many companies.
Yeah, I think that's the point that I would emphasize is that there's more and more recognition of how critical this role is. It's no longer just a necessary part of servicing equipment that is out in the field that needs to be repaired or installed. It's really about building a better relationship with your customers and helping to drive that bottom line growth of your organization. And I think that more and more field service people are starting to understand that real bottom line business impact that they're having.
Absolutely. Okay, good. So the next question is asking, what changes do you see with contractors in field service?
Oh, that's an interesting one, and we're actually starting to see that trend right now. Contractors traditionally were the distant cousin, for lack of a better word, of field service teams, right? It wasn't an us necessarily versus them, but it certainly wasn't an incorporated member of the family. And we're starting to see from ServiceMax perspective, and from my experience, that shift dramatically. Now third-party contractors are actually being brought into the fray, and our customers using ServiceMax, they're actually deploying that solution to those third parties. So those third parties have access to the same tools, and to take that a little further, to the same incentives, to the same gamification, to the same visibility into how they are kind of doing and how they are enabling the overall goals of the company. So we're seeing a big shift from working with customers that we've got a small field service team, and yes, we have third-party contractors, to thinking of it as a holistic group and actually putting that tool on the third-party contractor's desktop. Again, all the ducks facing in the same way, quacking at the same time, all good.
Yeah, actually, I was at a conference last year and heard a new term that I thought was pretty cool. It was labor as a service. And I think this is something that's also happening in our industry where organizations are looking at finding people that have certain talent in different areas that are maybe in a role as a contractor and really kind of leveraging that labor within their organization as a service component to fill some of the technician roles that they need in their organizations. And so it becomes more of a fluid workforce for them to take advantage of. So I thought that was an interesting trend that seems to be taking hold as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the next question is a good question. It's asking, is it worth discussing the nature of the work these new workers are doing? So, is there differences between recruiting tradesmen or high-tech workers? Are the techniques the same? Can you guys speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give this a shot, and Patrice can add on. I think that maybe the approach is probably a little bit more high-tech as a result of the kind of nature of the audience that we're recruiting to. And I think that the techniques are a little bit different than you might in recruiting a tradesperson who is, particularly skilled in a specific, specific vocation. So I think that it is a little bit different, and I think this is where you get into some of the social channels that Patrice was talking about and attracting people with some of the tools and technologies that they're using and the impact that they can have within the organization as opposed to focusing on a specific trade area. So.
Yeah, I think it used to be the old adage of you hire for skills and you fire for fit. And that was always surprising to everybody. In many cases, that was it. And I think we're starting to see a shift where we're hiring for skills and for fit.
Right.
Because the work that these guys are doing is as much, remember, this is the face of your company, right? I mean, if you look at most field service organizations, we've gone to self-service web portals. We have sales folks that might check in upon contract renewal and perhaps some other milestone events throughout the year. But the face, the relationship, the look me in the eye kind of thing is still sitting with the field service tech. So their role is becoming a little more equal in the soft skill area as opposed to just the high tech. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that our customers are recognizing that as well and kind of putting some gratification things into the implementation, starting to think of that in terms of career path and that kind of thing. I don't know if that helps, but.
Okay, good. So we are out of time for today, so we're gonna close there. Randy and Patrice, thank you so much for all of the great information you shared. This is, as I mentioned at the beginning, a very common pain point for a lot of the organizations that we work with, and something that I think people are going to have to be thinking about and preparing for more and more as we go along. So great information today, and thank you so much to everyone in the audience that joined us. Hope you found good value in the content we provided today, and hope everybody has a great rest of your day.